You're listening to Your Magical Midlife. This podcast is for women who are seekers, dreamers, and out-of-the-box thinkers. If you're a Gen X woman who never quite fit in, and probably never will, listen up. I'm Kate Higgins, your host. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and coach, and I'm here to guide you through the expansive, exhilarating, and sometimes exhausting crossroads that we find ourselves in at midlife. Whether you're a seasoned listener or just joining the adventure, think of this podcast as your hot pink convertible cruising down the highway of change. Together we'll navigate the sometimes baffling backroads of midlife and collect all the cool souvenirs along the way. Get in and buckle up. Our map may have flown out the window miles ago, but that doesn't mean we aren't going to have a blast. Let's hit the road and discover the magic just around the bend. Wiley Women is a wellness brand that wants you to live your best midlife. Developed by a naturopath, they offer tinctures, supplements, and drink mixes. Wiley uses plant medicine and clinical studies to demystify and embrace the hormonal powers and hidden complexities of grown women from the inside. Female formulated and female founded. Plus, they offer free shipping and easy returns. I love the Unworried tincture, which has bacopa, holy basil, passion flower, and reishi. It helps calm my body and stops the spinouts. It reduces jitters and lightens my mood. Go to www.wileywomen.com and use code KATEH2O at checkout to get 20% off. That's www.wileywomen.com and use code KATEH2O for 20% off. Alyssa Abrahamson is a functional nutritionist and wellness coach and the host of the podcast Positively Anti-inflammatory. She is also a burlesque performer and has toured the whole world under the name Minnie Tonka. I am so pleased to have her on the show to talk about self-care and self-compassion. So, Alyssa, tell us how you got into this work.
Hello. And the work that we are really going to be focusing on right now in our conversation is that I do through helping people in their healing journey. And so I guess the title that I go by, although it doesn't fully encompass what I do, I think I do so much more, but as a nutritional therapist and holistic wellness coach.
Wow.
And yeah, so I've been doing that since.
And what led you onto that journey?
So I have an autoimmune disease. I have rheumatoid arthritis, and I just turned 51 in January, and I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis at the end of 2000. So I've had it for over 20 years.
Wow.
And yeah, and I mean, it's a long journey, but essentially I was in my late 20s and young and out doing things and, went on medication, didn't ask questions, didn't care, and was essentially in remission for about a decade. And that brought us to the year 2010. And since that time, I'd actually started performing burlesque. I also started performing burlesque 20 years ago. And just as I was starting to perform burlesque full time, unfortunately, the medication I was on stopped working. And I came out of remission. And so there was several years where I was literally touring nationally and internationally and in severe chronic pain. And when I think about that, I don't know how in the hell I did it. I do not know how I did it. And at that point, I didn't have health insurance anymore. And the rheumatologist that I had, I developed a relationship with. So she would write me prescriptions and I would just pay full price for that, even though the medication wasn't working. And so there was a lot of not only physical pain, which causes emotional and mental and spiritual pain, but just a lot of insecurities around not only being a performer, but just a human, meaning like I was in so much pain and I felt that, I was young and I looked good. So I felt like embarrassed to ask for help And one example that I like to give is opening up a water bottle. I couldn't do that for many years. And I would be embarrassed to ask people. I live in New York City. I remember I'd go to the bodega and like get a bottle of whatever it could be, kombucha, water. And I would just be like, oh, would you mind opening that up for me? Because there was no way I could open it up on my own. So those like seemingly simple were really embarrassing, and it made me feel just it was very confusing and difficult. And also, performing and being in nightlife for so many years and touring, I also felt that it just was even more hard on my body, and then it got to the point where it was honestly like the height of my burlesque career, and I was performing and headlining like festivals in Europe twice. And that year my dad was like dying and he died. It was like this crazy year, like all these amazing things were happening and all these super devastating things were happening in my life, but also in my body. And then long story short, I was performing in Key West that October 2013, and I was in this. It was a theatrical burlesque production. It was like a 4-night run, and I was in group numbers. And I remember I would go to rehearsal and I would just kind of stand in rehearsal. And I'm not really good at remembering choreography. And I would stand in the rehearsal and watch everyone else rehearse and learn the choreography. And I couldn't move. I was in so much pain. Somehow every night showtime would come on and I would go and do my solos and do group acts. And then when it was done, I was like crawling home. And then having my dad had just died like 2 months before, I was like, it was crazy. It was crazy. Anyway, so
Let me pause you for a second.
Yeah.
Having performed with you many, many times, I had no idea that you were in pain. Ever, ever, ever. So I think there's a message that we always have to push through. And was that what you were doing? Were you just like pushing through?
Well, that's bringing tears to my eyes that you say that. Like, I'm gonna cry. Because it was so painful. I think, yeah, I just didn't understand what was happening in my body, and I wasn't ready to accept it. And it was like kind of a roller coaster, like, but there was like overall, when I think back to that time, I honestly don't know how I did it. And yes, I was, I guess this was kind of late 30s up until I was about, 40. And, I just, at that, I kind of jumping ahead. I mean, I really have dedicated, the past decade, my 40s, to my own personal physical, emotional, and spiritual healing. And I'm also that kind of a person. So that's always been my spiritual and emotional growth has always been a huge part of my seeking in life. But having chronic pain and fatigue, I had never experienced. And then when I experienced it, and it was so shocking, and I was in a community in a industry that was about movement and about staying up late and not having not sleeping and not having the greatest diet and not, you know what I mean? And drinking and
all those things.
Yeah. So it was like crazy. And so, yeah, I don't know how I did it. I mean, I just, it's wild to me. And so.
And you were always nice. You always had never like not pain. When people are in pain, like they're terrible, they're horrible. And you were nice and really warm, really welcoming to everybody. Always. I don't know how you did it. I have no idea.
Thank you. I don't know. Well, yeah, it's the Capricorns. I don't know. I don't know.
I'm not always nice.
Maybe it's my Pisces rising. I don't know.
That's it.
But yeah, so it's wild because it was literally a decade ago. It was the end of 2013, beginning of 2014. that I made this decision that I was like, I have to stop performing full time and I have to focus on my body. And I'd never prioritized myself in any way. I've always put other people first. I know that's very common for many people. And I think, and just a shout out to anyone with an autoimmune disease, that's like always a common thread. And I had no idea what it meant to like prioritize my health. Like no idea. I was like a rock and roll girl my whole life. You know what I mean? I wasn't like, didn't go to the gym. I wasn't like yoga person. I remember once my rheumatologist, I asked her, this is so many years ago. I asked her like, well, do you think I should be doing yoga? And she was like, nah, it's not going to make a difference. Lady. Anyway, I just cannot believe that. But she was wrong because it does. But at the time I didn't, I was young and I was like, great, I don't want to do anything. Like I want to, go to parties and do whatever I want to do. Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I made this decision to stop performing full time, which was burlesque full time, and it honestly still is, but more of the time it was a huge identity crisis because it had been such a huge part of my life for so many years to really take this massive step back at the time where I was really like in the height of my burlesque career.
Just for the people who are listening, most people don't have a burlesque career. I mean, you were at a level that most people never get to, right? I mean, most people have a burlesque hobby where they make maybe $50 to $100 a week. Maybe they make $400 a month if they're really lucky. You had an actual career where you were touring and headlining. You were a professional dancer. You were a professional dancer. Let's just call it what it is.
Yes, but let's also say burlesque, we don't really make money, so it wasn't. But I was doing it for a handful of years.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
That was my sole. Yeah, that was it. So, and I'm very grateful.
A working artist.
Yeah. And I'm so grateful.
Working.
So when I made that decision to stop performing, that was so like terrifying. And this decision to, what does this mean? What is healing? What the hell is that? And so I ended up getting a part-time job to just like help pay my rent. And what was super interesting is that for me, so this is the beginning of 2014, I was like, okay, I have a master's degree and I'm literally getting a part-time administrative assistant job. And I worked so hard to not judge myself because my career, whatever, because I've been through different careers in my life, has always been like top priority for me. And I've always been very successful. And so for me to kind of take this job that was not a part of, that just was kind of, I hate to use this word, but like, it just was a different path for me. Like it just felt like I was smarter than that. You know what I mean? But it worked for me at the time. And I'm very grateful because I could walk to work. And it was interesting at that time, the job was in a neighboring, close to me in Brooklyn where I live. And I would, during that first year, 2014, I was in so much pain. It would take me about 20 minutes to walk there. And when I started to get better and better, it would just take like me 10 minutes to walk. Like now, yeah, it would probably take me 9 minutes to walk there, but it would take me double the amount because I could barely move. It was crazy. And so for me, the changes that I made in my healing first were lifestyle and mindset. It wasn't nutrition. Although I had eliminated dairy and gluten in 2012 to help with inflammation, but it literally took me 6 months to gain the courage to not live off of bagels, pizza, and Ben and Jerry's and
things in life
and tuna melts. Yeah, I mean, and so, and people ask, "Oh, did that make a huge difference?" And what I noticed when I did it is I am like within a couple months, literally dropped like 15 pounds.
Oh.
Didn't necessarily like I didn't have like major transformation, but it was very interesting to notice like, holy crap, I did nothing different besides eliminate 2 of the top inflammatory foods, dairy and gluten. And then I dropped weight. So I was like, my body didn't need that. That was that was just like extra inflammation that was on my body that was completely unnecessary. So focusing on lifestyle and mindset, and that's truly when I work. So as a wellness coach, I work with people one-on-one, and so many people come to me for many different health, whether it's chronic illness or autoimmune disease, same thing. They're both chronic, or some sort of. I mean, I really love to help people with chronic issues because it's something that I can relate to and I've worked through. And chronic pain, I can so deeply relate. But people come and want help with nutrition, and absolutely I help people with nutrition. But what I really, we were talking about this before we recorded, what I think is so important is really helping people, because this is my path. And so, when we have our path, and then that's how we like to work with people. But what I've found for myself and for all of the people that I have worked with over the past 6 years is that if you want to actually make like true, authentic changes, it's not just like, oh, I'm going to work with Alyssa for 6 months and like, give me a meal plan and I'll just do this. And then, because then after you stop working with me, you're just going to go back to whatever you've been doing. So I'm invested in anyone who is ready to have me as their partner in this, and like their support and their guide. I help people, because this is what I've done for myself, literally go deep into who you are and understanding like what are your thoughts and beliefs around your decisions, and make slow, meaningful, authentic changes so they're lifelong changes. And that starts with shifts in your lifestyle and your mindset before diving into like, okay, quickly, like do the, everyone wants to like a quick fix, or they're like, yesterday I want this, or like, give me a 10-day detox. Let me do. And it's like, sure, but like, how is that going to help you in the long run? It's actually not.
I think we're all very addicted to the quick fix, and I'm going to do this now, and that we make extreme changes to our diets that are not sustainable.
Right.
Like the lemonade diet, or the first one I'm thinking of, but
just like whatever,
something, right? There's always something pushed at us.
Yeah.
It's going to work. And I think consistency is probably the best thing we can do for ourselves, right? Like,
I mean, I think it's so everyone has a hard time with consistency. So I like to kind of push back on everything. I like to push back on like work-life balance. I like to push back on like any kind of like buzzwords. I like to just not just like, yes, that's it. Everyone's different, and sure, consistency. And also there's a lot of people who feel like crap because they're inconsistent, and then they feel they're doing it wrong.
But emotionally like crap, right? Because they can't.
Correct. Then they're beating themselves up. So that goes back to that mindset shift. For me, it's like the first thing for me on my healing was like, learn to not judge myself for taking this part-time job, and learn to not judge myself that I was physically not capable of having a full-time job. I had no energy. The fatigue was beyond belief. The pain was my full body, like rheumatoid arthritis. Like it wasn't just like, oh, a knee here and there. It kind of moved around. It was like full body for so long.
I want to pause on that for a second, because some people who are listening to this may not even know what rheumatoid arthritis is.
Yeah. So it's an autoimmune disease that essentially, with rheumatoid arthritis, it's where the body is kind of, it gets confused and then is
like attacking it.
I hate the word attacking though. I just hate that. So I don't really know what other word to use, but that's what it's, it's basically going for the joints, and also the bones, but it also affects organs, but really just kind of on a very simple level, it's going for the joints. So it affects all of the joints. So hands, wrists, elbows, knees, hips, feet, ankles, any joint. And so it creates inflammation around that. And then like for me, I have like range of motion. I have like limited mobility. Like I can't fully, my elbows are kind of locked at a certain degree. I have my fingers and my hands are very, like if you look at, they're very arthritic. Like they're doing this something called like the rheumatoid arthritis kind of slide. Like they go to the side. So just that's not everyone has that, but it's a very, very common thing. So like the strength in my hands, I can open bottles now, but like regular exercise, like my body doesn't, my body is more the gentle exercise. So for me, it was really about, that word gentle, like going again back to the mindset aspect. It was about having been this like workaholic, overachiever, perfectionist Capricorn for my whole life, then recognizing, holy crap, my body is crying and cannot do this. So learning to not judge myself and recognizing, oh, actually, my career doesn't have to be my top priority. I can be my top priority. My health can be my top priority. And that was so huge for me. And I think a lot of people have a hard time honoring that and listening to their bodies and giving themselves that care and love. So self-compassion was huge. Even before I knew about there's a whole field of self-compassion. I was learning that, teaching myself that.
Right.
Because how else could I live with pain? I could have gone down like the downward spiral negative loop. And trust me, I go there. We all do. We're human. But I chose to really just to work on my own like self-talk and changing it from negative to more compassionate and caring and nurturing.
Yeah. I imagine when you have a chronic illness, it can make you feel very vulnerable, especially when you are diagnosed to be young and you're young and strong and you're supposed to be invincible and do everything.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, that's why I don't remember. When I think back to 20 something years ago being diagnosed, I kind of think that I didn't take it seriously. I kind of was like, okay, give me a pill. Let's go. You know what I mean? Although leading up to getting the diagnosis in the 90s, I was having a lot of weird things happening with my body. Like there were times where for like a month, I couldn't walk. I would go to the doctor, have blood work, like my finger swelled up. I'd go to the doctor, blood work, like weird, like just kind of like pain that would last for like maybe a week or like a month, and then it would go away. And then 6 months would go by and nothing. And I'd keep going to the doctor. And that's what happens with autoimmune disease. It can take years. It took about 5 or 6 years for it to show up in the blood work. And that's very common for autoimmune disease. So I had some very scary times leading up to before it was diagnosed. But then after it was diagnosed, because the medication worked, I was just, I was like all of my 30s, I was whooping it up in New York City. You know what I mean? Just like
down the subway stairs with your gig bag and
right, just doing it all. Yeah, just like full on. Yeah. So it's so interesting. And so 2014, 15, 16, that's when I would still had the part-time job, just still like I was still performing, just not as much. I was really just doing there was a lot of solitude. There was a different kind of internal work that I had done before because there was physical pain. And then I started feeling better. And I read about the Nutritional Therapy Association. And I remember I read this like blog post of someone who was a nutritional therapy practitioner. And I started to cry. And I was like, and whenever that happens, I know that's my intuition. And then I want to do that. And so I went to the website and I was like, I have to do this. And so long story short, I went back to school in 2017 and then became a nutritional therapist. And what's amazing about that program is that is when I learned about nutrition. That's when I learned about digestion. That's when I learned about gut health. That's when I learned about organs and systems. That's when I learned about the body and science and how our body works. And it was in biology. And it was so fascinating to me because I had never cared. I took my body for granted, like often we do, and that's fine. That's the human way, until shit hits the fan, we're good to go, and then we're like,
your body was like, stop, slow down, slow down.
Yeah. So that going back to school and being with the other students, it was just this whole new world and field of nutrition and holistic and wellness. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And that is what led me to where I am. to date. And since then, I've continued to make so many changes and experiment with myself in my nutrition, a lot of changes, and also just kind of evolving in how I help people and how I work with people. And that feels really good to be, and I know that it will continue to evolve, but it feels really good to be in a place being very established, and I know who I am and what I can offer, and having now years of experience of helping people where I really can be very clear, like, oh, you're actually not the right fit for me. Because if people just want to see a nutritionist and someone to tell them what to do, you're not, then that's not me.
Most people go to a nutritionist like, make me thin, right?
Yeah. I mean, most people who work with me end up losing weight, but it's not a guarantee. And it's typically not the goal. It's a different kind of healing that we're doing, but I really love, like I said earlier, just creating this connection and partnership with people who I work with so we can really go deep and talk about their body and their health and their wellness in ways that they have never explored before, to really help them create that changes that like, typically people come to me for one thing and then they leave and they know themselves better, they understand themselves better, they have a deeper connection, they have more self-compassion, they have more self-love, they are making choices that are more in alignment. And I think that to me is so meaningful and so beautiful, and that is healing versus just like, let me do a 10-day detox and move on with life. And a lot of people do that. And I'm not saying don't do that. If that's you, great. But just out of my life experience and having so much pain, and because of who I am, like, I'm like, let's go to our soul and connect that with our body. And let's, feel vital and see what that's like and how you can, do that and what that feels like. And that's amazing.
So at this point, you do holistic wellness coaching, which means you aren't just working with people who have autoimmune. You're working with anybody who wants to feel as good as they possibly can.
Well, I think about this often because yes, I do. But I think most people come because there is something that has been going on for a while,
Right.
And because when there is something that then there's been a health thing that's been going on for a while. It could even just be like chronic migraines, for example. That has potentially become a part of your identity, and it's maybe something that you accept but you don't accept. And so it's like helping you figure that out to get to a place where you are in a better place with that, where there is movement and forward movement and healing. And also, I think, going back to that fighting against yourself, often, if we are fighting against our bodies, how is that helpful?
Not.
I've
had so much of my own struggles with my body. I had an eating disorder in my teen.
Yeah.
I honestly became a vegetarian probably to manage my weight.
Yep.
Now that I'm post-hysterectomy and post-menopausal because I had, everything had to come out, I wonder, if my nutrition could be adjusted to feel better. I'm still like exploring that and thinking about that. But I'm finally, and I think a lot of women will identify this, I'm finally putting down the mantle of I have to manage my body and I have to manage restrict or whatever, like eat to just make my body look a certain way.
Right.
As I age, I'm like, how do I want to feel? I want to have the best mobility I can have.
Right.
I see my dad like with his walker at, 80. He's 83. He's had the walker for 3 years. He can barely walk. You don't have to age that way. And I think take really good care of yourself and you have self-compassion, you don't have to. Like, I'm trying to take my foot off the gas pedal a little bit myself as I'm getting older and I see slowing down.
Yeah. And it's hard because it's like there is that, that term compare and despair. It's like we do, it's like we see other people around us and then we compare and there's, but it's like, and, unfortunately that's just that's there for a lot of us.
Yeah.
But I think that if we can, I think just cultivate, I talk about this all the time. I have a podcast. It's called Positively Anti-inflammatory. And I talk about this all the time on my podcast. I mean, I want to help people cultivate a harmonious relationship with themselves and with their body.
Oh, I love that. Like, make friends with your body.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't even have to be, yes, friends, but I think harmonious, because I think yes, absolutely. But I think there's something about this word harmony and harmonious that is, I don't know. It just, it brings a different twist in a way. I mean, so when we talk about self-compassion, I mean, that is like you treat yourself like you would a friend. So 100%. And people can really identify with that, because a lot of us don't treat ourselves like a friend with our, the thoughts that are going on in our brains, beating ourselves up and stuff like that. But yeah, cultivating that self-awareness and that self-connection. And I don't know, I just feel like we just deserve to feel good.
I love that. A lot of people in the wellness space are really, they were like personal training and you have to eat like this and you can't do, very, very rigid and very like corporate in a lot of ways. And I like that you're taking a much more compassionate approach.
Thanks. Well, I also had eating disorders, my teens and my 20s. So I'm totally like anti counting or calories or this or that. Like that is, for some people that totally works. For me and the people that I work with, that does not work.
You're not
And
get a list of like macros that you have to
not
eat.
interested in that. Absolutely not. Absolutely not interested in that. I think our relationship with food and how we nourish ourselves doesn't have to be rigid. It can be fun and interesting and yummy, and not, people also the other thing is like people don't want to be deprived, and we don't have to be deprived. You don't have to like completely like upheaval and to feel deprived and like blah 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 to feel better in your body. There's just,
we came of age in like the, non-fat, glory days of like Snackwell cookie.
Oh my God, tell me about it. Yeah.
Burritos that made you shit pants.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my God. Yes, exactly. I mean, yeah. Yes. Yes. I think everyone is on their own path and everyone has their own unique needs and has their own lifestyle. And it really is, if someone is seeking to feel better in their body and they're seeking to feel vibrant and less pain or work on some chronic issue or whatever, I think it is recognizing like, what do you actually need? Like, what's actually like, if things that you've tried in the past are making you feel like crap, but you think that that's like how you quote should be doing it, it's like, what if you gave yourself permission to change your mind? I also love that. I love the idea of giving yourself permission to change your mind. So that's what happened. We talked about this before. I was also a pescatarian for many years, and it came out of an eating disorder. It's like, oh, I want to be healthy, so I'm not going to eat any meat.
Right.
And so I didn't eat meat for like 30 something years. And I ate fish, but it was like, I barely cooked it at home. I mean, I essentially ate gluten and dairy, you know what I mean? And vegetables and fruit, you know what I mean? I just was like, the fake healthy vegetarian, you know what I mean? Like, and for me, and so when I went back to nutrition school and I was learning about digestion and gut health and the science of nutrition, I was like, oh my God. And recognizing how carbohydrates, fats, and protein are all, what they do in the body and how they inform your health and impact health. My body literally started craving meat. And I had been craving meat, but I kept on shutting it down for so many years. And so I was like, this is BS. So I literally freaked out and I was like, oh my God. And I gave myself permission to change my mind from a decision I made when I was 14 years old.
Oh, I'm with you. I've been debating whether or not because I'm like, I bet my energy level could be better. I shouldn't be this tired after sleeping 9 hours. I should wake up and feel really good. I shouldn't wake up and be like, oh. Like it was like, maybe I should start with a little bone broth. Start with a little something. I'm O negative. My acupuncturist was like, you should be eating meat. I haven't eaten meat since 1989, but I'm thinking.
That's so funny. It's so funny. You just used the word should like 8 times. So I just want to love that. So maybe it's not about like, I would be more just kind of curious. Like I'm sleeping 9 hours. I wonder and I'm not feeling energized when I wake up. I wonder what that is.
I like that approach.
You know what I mean? Versus like, oh my God, blah, blah, blah. I should be doing this. I should be doing that. Like, it's like, I love like getting curious and not being judgmental and trying to just explore and investigate. Well, what might that be? Maybe that is, eating meat, especially if you're having hunches. So yeah, when I started eating meat and I gave myself permission to eat meat, I was like so scared. But my body loves meat. My body is like, and this is just me. I know other people, it's different. So everyone's unique, but I am digesting it way better than I ever did bread or gluten or anything like, you know what I mean? And I'm really just in terms of animal protein, since nutrition school, I'm very, very aware of incorporating more into my diet. And it just really, it just works very well for me. So, and I'm grateful that I recognize that was an outdated thought that I made 30 something years ago, and that I could let go of that. That was a different, version of myself when I was 14 years old. So,
and it was
I think
the youth culture that we both come from.
100%.
Like Marty and Howard Jones and Consolidated and like Skinny Puppy. And all these all these bands that were like very, very pro-vegetarian, I saw the Rock Against Fur concert, in high school.
Yeah.
I was like PETA and all that stuff.
Yeah. So, again, everyone has their own decisions, but that's my path, is that I am grateful that I gave myself permission to change my mind. And so I love, with anything in my life, I love to reevaluate and think about, okay, that's a thought that I was thinking. Is that still serving me? Is that still working for me? Like, I don't need to hold on to that anymore. And I think that can be helpful for us when we're navigating our lives, Yeah,
giving yourself permission to grow and change is one of the most important lessons. Adulthood. I'm going to move into our lightning round so I don't keep all day. Do you drink coffee or tea or neither or something?
Tea.
Tea. What kind of tea?
I drink herbal tea and green tea and matcha sometimes.
Matcha. Do you put any?
Well, if I get matcha, so I tried to make matcha at home, and because I don't eat dairy, so I was like it just doesn't taste as good as when you go to the cute little coffee shop and they make you a matcha. But this is where it gets tricky. Non-dairy milk can be not great, and there's different things. And so like I would do almond milk, but then it's like there's so many almonds and almonds might be inflammatory. Anyway, this is all that goes on my brain. So I do indulge, but just not that often. So I would do it like plain with like almond milk or coconut milk.
Nice.
Yeah. Or like lots of different herbal teas. I'm a tea girl.
What's your favorite snack to go with your tea?
Oh boy, snack to go with my tea. I would say any kind of baked good that I make, which I make a lot of gluten, dairy, grain-free baked good. So I love baking.
Give me your favorite little baking recipe to put in the show notes.
Okay, I actually just 2 nights ago I have so many. I'll think about that, but I'll just share that I just made this double batch, a huge batch of these gluten and dairy-free zucchini walnut muffins. And they're made with tiger nut flour. And tiger nut flour is a tuber. It's not a nut. And it's like this, it is such a delightful flour to bake with because it has just like a natural sweetness. Are you familiar with it?
Never heard of it.
It's really good. They used to have it at Whole Foods. They have it at some It's really hard to find, so I actually had to start buying it online because Whole Foods, for some reason, stopped carrying it. Maybe it's just not as popular. But anyway, so I just made those. So I'm very excited that I have so I like to have that with tea. So that would be like any sort of like a little baked good that I make.
It sounds yummy. Does it have sweetener in it?
Yes. What is in it? Maple syrup.
I just got some organic maple syrup from Amazon today.
Yum.
Made a batch of coconut bacon.
Oh, fun.
I love coconut bacon. Okay. What is your theme song for this phase of your life?
Okay. That is, I have no idea. Let me just think about that. Hard. That's a hard question because I love music so much and I don't, it's kind of like, is it like what music am I listening to a lot of right now? Or is it like,
Yeah, like
wow,
favorite song right now?
oh God. Well, I'm just obsessed with Robin Hitchcock. Do you know him?
Yes, and the Egyptians.
I'm obsessed with him. I love him. And first time I saw him was like when I was in college, maybe 92 or 93. And then I saw him a couple weeks ago. And then I saw him like a year ago. And anyway, I just love him. There's not like a theme song of my life for him, but I cannot get enough of him. He is an amazing person. He's just incredible. And
Smart.
he is just, he's hilarious. Like when I saw him a couple weeks ago, it was just him and his freaking guitar. And he's like a stand-up comedian. He's so witty and hilarious, and he's just engaging with the audience. And what's really funny, and I know this about him, is he's a Pisces and he's really into astrology. So when I saw him last year, and I'm really into astrology, and I know you are. So when he introduced all the musicians last year, because he had a bunch of musicians on stage last year, he literally said their sign. And then one person, he was like, and I was a woman who was like subbing. She was like a bassist. He's like, this is whoever it was. And it was my first ever in my entire career working with an Aquarius bassist. Anyway, he's hilarious and I love him. And I just feel like I'm obsessed with him. I wouldn't say it's a theme song of my life right now. I don't know. That's such a hard question. Do you have a theme song of your life right now?
I mean, right now I'm on a B-52s tear.
Yeah. And I guess, yeah, I mean, how about this? But this could be the theme song for everyone's life. What about that Alanis Morissette song, You Live, You Learn? How about that?
There you go. There you go. Good one. Good one.
I haven't listened to it in a long time, but you know, I love Alanis. Let's listen. Let's listen to Jagged Little Pill.
We're 90s, girl. What's your superpower?
What's my superpower? Helping people feel comfortable and welcome.
You always make me feel comfortable and welcome.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
Yeah. Especially in that tough nightlife world.
Yeah, it's tough. Yeah. I think also when I, just think about working with people one-on-one, what I really love and what I'm just recognizing over the years as I'm doing it, I work so much off of intuition. So, really kind of continuing to, I think a superpower could be being like awareness of self to want to and to cultivate that and then nurture that. Because I think that can be, I don't know, I just love it. I feel like there's so much energetic connection with that. And I love that. So I'm really interested in just cultivating that more for myself and for everyone that I encounter. Yeah.
And lastly, if you could get in a time machine and tell your 30-year-old self something, what would you tell her?
So what year was 30? What year? Okay.
Are you 71 also? Or are you?
I'm 30. No, I'm 1973. So, okay. So
2003.
yeah, let me think about that. I would say, that's actually when I was finishing graduate school and I got my first job, which I loved so much, but I feel like my history of working so hard was really detrimental to my health. I wasn't ready to listen, so it's kind of hard to say this, but I think it would be like if I could learn to breathe. But I don't know if I was ready to listen when I was 30, but I think learning to breathe and also I think that it kind of comes down to that. It's about, and I think when we think about breath, it's about slowing down and being present and self-connection versus kind of like scrambling and running, all that kind of, which I was doing so much of and having so much fun, but I was going outward versus inward. So I think, I don't know if I'd be ready to hear it, but I think if I could, if I would be willing to listen when I was 30, I think it'd be like learning to connect with myself and my breath. And because I think from there, so much can shine through and be discovered.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your generosity.
Oh, thanks for having me.
I'm going to put all your links in the show notes so everyone can connect with you. You can follow her on Instagram and all the places that will be in the show notes.
Thank you so much for listening to Your Magical Midlife. I'm Kate Higgins, your host. You can follow me on Instagram at Your Magical Midlife. You can also check out my offerings on my website, which is www.yourmagicalmidlife.com. I offer individualized coaching for women 45 plus who are seekers, dreamers, and out-of-box thinkers. I also offer luxury retreats that include ritual, rites of passage, and ceremony for women 45 and beyond. I'd be so excited to work with you. Also, if you're feeling kind and you've enjoyed this episode, please leave me a 5-star review as it opens this podcast to a broader audience and keeps me in those pesky algorithms. Thank you so much for your partnership with me. I appreciate you. Have a great week.